All right, guys, so today you're going to start a new analysis method. It's actually called The Method. It's one that I picked up from Wind River when I taught there. This is something that high school teachers did there, and I had never found a really good way to fit it into our curriculum until this year. So I'm really excited about being able to do this one. We did DEJs before. That's one method. This will just be another one that you can kind of add to your repertoire of how to read and think critically about literature. So before we get started, you guys need to be able to split yourselves into different groups. We need groups of like 3 or 4. So go ahead, pause the video at this point, and you guys can split into those 3 or 4 groups. You'll be working with them through the example that we're going to do. All right, so now that you are in your groups, we're going to go ahead and get started. The example that we're going to use is actually a painting. The nickname for it is called The Whistler's Mother. It's a pretty famous painting. They use it a lot in art history classes. But as you can see, there's not a lot going on in it. So it's also kind of a complex piece, much like the literature that we're reading in class this year. And so this will help you guys have to go a little bit further even with this example. So the first step we already did with Frankenstein. It's repetition, so you guys are pretty familiar with this. Again, in this photo, there's not a lot going on, so it's going to be harder to find repetition. So you're going to have to think pretty critically. Think about different things that they use to analyze paintings as far as texture and color and subject matter. All of that stuff can be something that you look at. But within your groups, go ahead here in just a second, pause the video, and take a minute, find as many repetitions as you can. Most likely you're only going to find 2 or 3, but that's okay. That'll be plenty. So go ahead, take 1 minute, find the repetitions, and then go ahead and share it out together before you move on in this video so that each of the groups have a turn to be able to share what repetitions they found. Okay, so now that you've done that, here are the ones that I found. You've got different shades of blue or cool colors going on within this scene. Even our brown down on the floor kind of has a little bit more cooler tint to it versus the darker paneling along the wall and the other darker colors in there. So you've got lots of shades of blue and cool colors. You've got lots of delicate patterns going on with her bonnet and the cuffs of her dress and her handkerchief. Even the curtain has some very detailed, delicate pattern in it. And then you've got conservative or less revealing, more concealing kind of clothing. So, her head bonnet, her dress has long sleeves. You don't see much of her. Her shoes are barely visible, but even those are very concealing as well. So those are the pieces I found. Hopefully you found some of those, maybe something that's a little bit different. So those are the repetitions. Next, we're going to take those and take some of those other ideas. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be just with those repetitions, but we're going to categorize and associate with other ideas. And so this takes a little bit more, one step further with your repetitions. We started this with Frankenstein in that I made you guys come up with headings for the different repetitions. So essentially you categorize those repetitions already. We're going to take this out though and make it a second step in our next book that we're going to do. So, take what you have. We'll pause the video for a minute and try and categorize them and then associate them with other things. So this is when you're kind of, okay, well, there's this idea here and I associate that with this. So the color blue or those lighter colors, what ideas, emotions do we associate with that? And that's kind of what we're talking about with associations. So take a minute, do that, share out again, and then continue with the video. Now that you've done that, here are some of the things I came up with. Loneliness and isolation is kind of an association that we had. The ideas I got from that, our subject is alone. There is no windows, or the window is covered with the curtain there. The body language seems very uneasy, almost like she's frail, needs that support, all of that kind of stuff. There's an idea of reflection and meditation. We have a picture and profile. She's not looking right at us, so it's kind of more of she's reflecting and thinking about other things. There's no action or speaking going on in the photo. She's just contemplating. And then there's the idea of self-effacement, which is like reservation, not really expressing yourself, kind of keeping yourself reserved, I guess. So hands folded, conservative dress. Again, the picture's in profile so we don't see her face completely. Motionless, a little bit lifeless. And there's an idea of mystery. So she's looking off somewhere else and we can't see it. Why is she alone? Even the pictures on the wall, the one that we can see, it's very unclear as to what's there. And the other one's only, not even, we just get a little sliver of it. So there's more there, we just can't see it. So that idea, there's something beyond the picture that we can see. Okay, the next step is oppositions. So in your groups, what you're going to do is take some of these ideas from the categories and associations as well as the repetitions, and you're going to think of what is the opposition of that. Because often when literature, what's not said or what's not there is just as important as what's there. And we saw that with satire especially, right? Oftentimes what was said in the satire is not actually what was even being talked about, it's what's behind it. If you think back to the test and we had that picture of the teenager, we weren't actually talking about teenagers and whether they're good or bad or gangsters or whatever. We're looking at people's perceptions of them, and we're looking at how people judge other people based off of the way that they look. None of that was said in that cartoon, but that's what we were looking at. And that's kind of the same thing here. So take a minute in your groups, pause the video, and think about some of these ideas and come up with oppositions. So an example would be, loneliness was an idea that we talked about. So loneliness versus company, or loneliness versus, a party or something along those lines. You can come up with your own, but try and list out as many as you can. I know first hour when they did this, we came up with quite a few, a pretty good list. So try and come up with 3 or 4 per group. Okay, so now that you've done that and you've shared out, I'm not going to read through all of these, but here are some of the ones that I came up with. And it's something, you can pick out different pieces here and different ideas that we had talked about, like the isolation, the meditation, strict, all of that kind of stuff is stuff that we've already kind of started to think about. Okay, so now up through this point, steps 1 through 3 are things that you're going to do as you're reading or very soon after you read. And so those are things that you can kind of collect and think about and add to. And the more you do this, the more you have to work with. After you get done reading, this will be step 4. You're going to go through and you're going to select the most relevant details. And those are the things that just mostly talk to you or that you really feel comfortable with in order to do a writing piece with this. So as you go through, these are the ones that I picked, but you might have picked something different. It just kind of depends. So you take these pieces and you select the most important details. This is something we'll talk about more as we get closer to Christmas break. But the idea here is you can have all of step 1 through 4 pretty much done when you leave for Christmas break and not have homework over the break, or you can kind of work on this through Christmas break if you kind of want to spread it out and take more time with this. So it's kind of up to you, but you have to have steps 1 through 4 done when you come back from Christmas break. That's kind of your deadline. Then once we get back from Christmas break in class, you guys will do a free write that takes these details and you kind of, flesh them out and make them a little bit more of an exploration piece. So this isn't something you necessarily even have to have a thesis for. It's not something you're coming to a conclusion about. We're just kind of looking at all of the possibilities of interpretation. We're looking at kind of the how and the why of Dickens, that's who wrote A Christmas Carol, why he wrote this in the way that he did. How did he write it? What were the methods that he used? And really taking some time to delve into that. I'm sorry about my throat, guys. And so that's what you're going to do. The sub will have a handout for you to see what this free write could look like, and you guys can read through that together as a class, so that you have a better idea. But hopefully this gives you kind of the ideas of what you're going to be doing. Once you get to the point, even really at this point, you guys can follow along with the video. If you get into Canvas, and you go to our class, obviously, and you can do this through modules, or you can do it through the to-do list for this week. But if you're in the British Literature Romanticism through Postmodernism, that's the section that we're on. This is the method with a Christmas Carol assignment. So if you tap on that, it takes you here. It has a little bit of instruction, but then it has our graphic organizer for you guys to use. So you can open this up, get it downloaded onto your iPad, so that you have access to it. Remember that if you're having a struggle downloading it, you should have a little like square with arrows pointing. It's a little tiny thing down in the right-hand corner. If you tap that, you should be able to download it. If that's not working for you, you guys can always go to OneDrive here and then go to your shared files, and it should be in there for you. But if you're struggling with getting it to your iPad, just let me know. But this is what it will look like. You guys can put your repetitions in, start making your categories and associations, start filling in some oppositions as you're reading, and then we'll do that focused free write when we get back. So if you guys have questions, please message me, let me know. You should have some time left over today now to be able to do your assignment and start reading and working on it, okay?